Chris Wilde. He was in a gang while growing up in care in Halifax. He's now written about his experiences and helps to mentor young people. Hello, Chris.
Hi, thank you.
So tell us about your experience of being in a gang then.
Yeah, when I was 11 years old, my dad died and I ended up in a care system. And because of the care system, how it was at the time, I ended up on the streets and became quite vulnerable. And it wasn't long before the older members of the gangs could see that I was a vulnerable person, and I was beguiled into a false sense of security. And before long, I joined them and started to engage in criminal activity with these older gang members.
And is that why children and young people end up in gangs? Because they're vulnerable and because people in gangs can see that?
There's no definitive answer to this. There's one reason, you know, again, which the news report touched on, it is the lack of social funding. When I was a young person, I managed to get out of the gang because there was so much opportunity for me at the time. Youth centres, boxing clubs. So I was one of the lucky ones. But now there's, you know, the government is just making so many cuts and closing down all these youth centres. There's nothing left for anyone.
We saw there that the police are trying to do something with possible changing of school or getting into school and housing, etc. What could be done, do you think, that would have an almost instant effect on reducing this?
Yeah, first of all, we need to start talking about prevention, not cure. Everybody talks about cure. Oh, what are we going to do to stop this? Let's go back to the foundations. How can we prevent it from happening? And that's what we have to look at. And somebody has to take responsibility, hence the government, and start to fund money back into youth services.
So what do we need? We need youth clubs, we need kids going to clubs after school. Is that what the problem is?
And of course, and investing in, you know, qualified staff who are, you know, qualified to deal with this kind of thing. Not just the police. Again, it's not the police's responsibility. It's a collaborative responsibility. Social services, police, schools, and the general public as well.
And these gangs and these young children, are they recruited by, dare I say, sophisticated methods? They're not just a gang on the street corner, is it?
Let's get this straight now, okay? This is a complex organisation. It's nothing like Fagin or Oliver Twist. These guys are businessmen. They know exactly what they're doing. They're manipulative. They're very clever. They go after the families, then they go after the young people.
So it must be terrifying for somebody who is in a gang. If someone's in that situation or knows somebody who they think might be in that situation, what should they do?
Well, you need to get them out of the situation, eradicate the danger straight away. First thing, take them out of the situation. Go to the police, go to social services. Now, what I do as a profession, if I see that, I take them away from it straight away. That's it. Get them out of the...
Do you have a big impact when you talk to these people?
Yeah, of course. You know, I'm going around, I hit the streets, I talk to them, I tell them about my own story, tell them about my book. And they see that as inspirational, and that's what you know, we lack prosperity nowadays on our streets. Let's put it back into the system and make people work hard, education, and, you know, sell it for what it is.
And what do the kids say back to you?
Well, it's a divided thing. Some people have no choice and other people want the choice, and that's the thing. It's all about segregation, deprivation, and pure poverty. People don't want to be poor, and for some people they say, well, it's my only choice, Chris. So we have to try and get away from that mentality.
Chris, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, you know, when I see it, I'll believe it. You know, people like me and Paige, this is what we do every day. We see it. We see young people dying every day. We see these young people coming into semi-independent care. We see county lines. They seem getting groomed into CSE. And for me personally, it hasn't changed in 20 years. So when you say government's going to invest money into the sector, where is it? And when is it going to come? How many more children need to die?
I feel like it's not that, though. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just feel like, I know money seems to be the discussion and it always comes down to money, but no discredit to staff that do this job. But I feel like when I'm sitting next to someone like this, whose heart is so clearly in this job and wants to do right by these young people, I mean, sometimes it's just that conversation, it's that communication that can be the difference between being completely isolated and completely lonely, and a knock on that door to say, do you need help to look for work today? Or, you know, have your benefits been sorted out? Would you like to take a walk? I mean, it's tiny little things like that are going to make such a difference.
Brilliant. And tell us how you know Chris here.
Well, I know Chris because our charity patron Stephen introduced me to Chris, and Chris has been to a few of our events, and yeah, he's just a really great guy, and he's got a good story to tell.
He is a great guy, and you've got quite a deep story, actually, haven't you, Chris? Because you were in the care system and you witnessed quite some horrific things, really. But can you tell us how you ended up in the care system in the first place?
Yeah, of course. You know, I had a very normal working class upbringing, and one day my dad died of chickenpox, and then overnight, obviously, the blue skies of my happy youth turned an ominous dark grey, and my mum met an abusive man, and social services got involved. I found my solace in going out into the streets, gravitating towards other young men like myself who had suffered that kind of trauma. got arrested a few times, and ended up in a children's home. And that was kind of like, you know, the transition from having a normal, happy lifestyle, you know, over a period of 12 months and end up in the care sector.
It's quick.
Yeah, it was very quick. It was very quick. It wasn't, and I wasn't able to adjust to that kind of environment. You know, I was still grieving over my dad. But going into care, like I said, it was, at first it was quite exciting because it was, you know, I was away from home, seeing my mom cry, mom drinking, my sister was traumatized, she'd met an abusive man. So going into that environment was an escapism.
It seemed safe at first.
Yeah, it seemed, but that's the paradox of a children's home. You know, you're supposed to be safe, yet you're surrounded by danger. And it wasn't until I'd been there for a few weeks, but I actually saw, you know, the kind of the iniquities of life unveil itself. And yeah, I was one of the lucky ones. Fortunately for me, I wasn't kind of involved in the abuse. I wasn't that vulnerable. I was quite a tough kid. Yeah. So I was a bit of a liability to them because obviously, you know, they prey on vulnerability. For me, I kept running away. The police kept bringing me back to the care home, and they didn't want that. They wanted that kind of secrecy. They didn't want any attention to the home. But I witnessed a lot of physical abuse, and yeah, I ended up running away. And before long, I lived on the streets for a short period of time.
So how did that, when you witnessed all of those things, because it wasn't just physical abuse, it was other things that you knew
it was
of
archaic.
all sorts
it was
of stuff.
Archaic sexual abuse. I mean, from 1972 to 1996, over 1,000 young people were. He said, I never ever had in my life my bed made for me. I thought, he's 15, and he's never had his bed made for him. And I thought, a young boy came to me once. He was 15 years old, and it was 2 weeks before his 16th birthday, so the placement accepted him. On those grounds, 9:30, a taxi pulled up, so I went outside and thought it must be the young boy because the taxi driver was looking around. And I remember going to the taxi and just seeing the young boy. He's like a rabbit in the headlights. He just didn't know what was happening to him, you know, passed from pillow to pillow. And I just remember seeing all the black bags in the car, and him being on his own. That's when I knew there's something wrong here. There's something wrong with this system, because you're allowing a 15-year-old boy to come to me on his own at night without representation. What I try and do, because I've been through the care sector, I know what it feels like firsthand. So with my homes, I try and build that ambience. So when he walked into my house, he walked into a welcoming home with happy people. The house was clean. We were there to support him, which he's never had before. And one of the things, I took him to his bedroom, and I opened the door, and then when he walked into his room, his eyes lit up, and I says, "What's the problem, mate? It's a nice room." He said, "No, it's a great room, but I've never ever had." He said, "I've never ever had in my life my bed made for me." I was so welled up at the time. I had to walk away because it broke me. It broke me, but you never had something so trivial, what we all take for granted, but your bed is made. But his previous placement, he said to me, when he went into his bedroom, it was just a mattress. A mattress. He's 15. I went home that night, and I said to my wife, I just said, "What's going on? What's going on? How is this possible?" And your own traumas come back to you. You're thinking, hang on a minute, I was in the care sector in 1992, and it was bad. It wasn't good. Still, in our day, in modern times, this kind of negligence is still happening, where a 15-year-old boy is treated like a stray dog. And that will never, ever leave my mind. And that's what's wrong with our system.